I told her I wouldn't drink that night. The words came out easily, like promises often do when you want peace more than truth. It's just one drink after work, Sarah, I said while tying my shoes. I'll be home early. She didn't argue, only gave me that quiet look, not angry, just already disappointed.
I should have understood it then.
It wasn't approval, it was a warning. Nights like that never begin with bad intentions. You convince yourself it's harmless. Just a few beers with the guys. Laughter echoing through a dim bar that makes everyone look younger. Then someone orders shots, another starts reminiscing, and suddenly time loses its shape. I don't remember much after midnight. Only fragments, the scent of whiskey, an old song, a stranger's hand on my arm. When I finally stumbled home, the streetlights had faded. My keys slipped twice before they turned. The clock on the stove read 5:03 a.m. My shirt was wrinkled, my jacket gone, belt half undone. Sarah was sitting on the couch, blanket wrapped tight around her like armor. Her eyes didn't look surprised, only exhausted. "So," she said softly, "you didn't drink?" Her voice wasn't loud or angry. It was worse, calm. I would have preferred shouting. I started to lie, but the words died before leaving my mouth. I smelled like a bar floor. She looked at me the way people look at something they once loved but barely recognize. "You said you wouldn't," she whispered. That hurt more than any fight we'd ever had, not because of the words, but because she said them like she already knew the ending. I wanted to tell her it meant nothing, that it was stress, the guys, or just time slipping away. But the truth was simpler. I'd been losing myself for months. The distance between us hadn't started that night. It had been growing quietly like fog, unnoticed until everything looked different. She used to wait for me by the window. Now she stayed in another room. I used to come home early to see her smile. Now I found reasons to stay away. Maybe she had her own walls too. The long silences, the way she'd move her phone when I entered, the forced small talk over dinner. We'd both been pretending the marriage was fine because facing the cracks was harder. That night only made the invisible visible. She stood, the blanket slipping to the floor. "I washed your work clothes," she said quietly. "They're on the chair." It was such a normal thing to say in a moment so broken that I almost laughed. But she walked past me slowly, calm, controlled, and shut the bedroom door without another word. I stood in the kitchen surrounded by silence, so heavy it felt alive. The smell of detergent lingered in the air, mixed with alcohol and regret. I went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, and stared at the man in the mirror. Bloodshot eyes, stained collar, hollow face. That wasn't the man she married. That wasn't who I wanted to be. For a while, I just stood there listening to the hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock, and something inside me quietly breaking. Morning light crept through the blinds, soft and uncaring. Birds sang outside, unaware that a marriage was dying in the next room. I wanted to knock on her door, to say something that could undo what I'd done. But every word sounded like an excuse, and she'd heard them all. So I sat on the couch, waiting for courage, the kind that comes before a real apology. When she finally came out, the sun was high. I'd been sitting there for hours, the TV on mute, replaying every mistake like a film I couldn't turn off. She didn't look at me right away. She poured coffee, stood by the counter, calm, steady, unreachable. I wanted her to yell or cry, to say anything that felt human. But silence is worse than anger. It means they've stopped trying. "I don't know what to say," I began. "I messed up. I know I did." She placed her cup down gently. "You always know," she said. "You always mess up and you always know. But it never changes anything, does it?" There was no cruelty in her voice, only weariness. That broke me more than anger ever could. She wasn't fighting anymore. "I didn't cheat," I said quietly. "Nothing happened." "I don't even care if you did," she replied. And that's when I realized how far gone we were. Love doesn't die in an instant. It fades, piece by piece, until all that's left is indifference. She picked up her keys. "I'm going to my sister's for a few days." "Sarah, don't ask me to stay so you can feel better," she cut in sharply. I wanted to promise things would change, but How many times had I said that before? Words without proof are just noise, and she'd grown tired of the sound. The door closed softly behind her. For the first time in years, the house felt too big, too quiet. I sat there, staring at the ring left by her coffee cup on the counter, wondering how something so small could hurt so deeply. The next few days blurred together, work, sleep, repeat. I didn't drink, not out of strength, but because the thought of it made me sick. The guys texted. I ignored them. Bars no longer felt like escape, they felt like reminders. By the third day, I found myself scrolling through old photos, us at the lake, painting the guest room, laughing at some forgotten joke. There was a time I couldn't imagine life without her. Somewhere along the way, I started acting like I already could. That night, I wrote her a letter, not a text, not an email, a real letter. It wasn't an apology. It was a confession. I wrote about the loneliness I'd buried under jokes, the way I used alcohol as an excuse instead of a reason. I told her I missed not just her, but the man I used to be when we were still okay. When I finished, I didn't send it. I just folded it neatly and left it on the table. A week later, she came back. I heard her key turn in the lock, quiet, hesitant.
She didn't speak.
She just saw the letter, unfolded it, and read. I sat across the room, watching her face shift between sadness and something softer. You actually wrote this? I did. And you didn't drink?
No.
She nodded slowly. Good. She didn't say she forgave me. She didn't say she was staying.
But she sat down and that was enough.
We talked, really talked for the first time in months. No blame, no defense. Just honesty. I told her I didn't expect her to trust me yet, only that I wanted the chance to earn it. When she left later that night to return to her sister's, she said, "We'll see." It wasn't a promise. It wasn't closure. It was a chance, and maybe that's all I deserved. I still don't drink. Not because she asked me to, but because I remember her face that morning, the quiet kind of hurt that lingers. People think the worst thing you can do is break someone's heart. It's not. The worst thing is making them stop believing you'll ever stop. Now, when I pass the bar on 7th Street, I keep walking, not from guilt, but gratitude. Because sometimes losing almost everything is the only way to remember what truly matters. And maybe someday, if I'm lucky, she'll look at me again the way she used to, before I turned promises into noise. Until then, I'll keep choosing to mean the words I say.